ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Fight for Our Freedom Radio. And I'm your host, Badbaby, accompanied by my co-host, Robert Pepino. And tonight we have Michael Horn with us. And we are going to have a fabulous show. I want to apologize for not being out here last week. Had nothing to do with it, you guys. TalkShoe's site was down. Who knows? Maybe it's the PX system. Who knows what's going on? I'm still having internet issues, so you're going to have to bear with me tonight.
Well, welcome everybody to Fight for Our Freedom Radio. I am your co-host, Robert Pepino, and Badbaby is on the other side, who just ran that wonderful music. I love that song, by the way, Bad Girl. Touches my heart, really does. But our guest tonight...
Well, at last, we're back out here.
Yeah, we are. And Michael, my apologies to you for both of our apologies, by the way, for last week. It was an unforeseeable situation that happened, and we both apologize. But I want to do your quick bio to let people know, for the people who have never heard of you, which is probably highly unlikely, but there are still going to be a few people out there. I want to do your bio. Because this is very, very important, and how long you have been doing this, how long you have been the representative for Mr. Billy Meyer. Now, here's the rundown, folks, and this is really important. I need you, and I'm going to put Michael's website in the chat room so you can all go there and check this out. This is important. But Michael Horn is the authorized American media representative for Billy Meyer, a reclusive man living in a rugged rural area of Switzerland who claims that his still ongoing UFO contacts with the Pleiadian extraterrestrial human beings began in 1942 when he was only 5 years old. Now, Michael immediately makes distinctions between what he calls the lights in the skies, tabloid type of UFO stories, and the Myers scientifically proven UFO contacts. Now, while there is now no shortage of, strictly anecdotal as well as completely imaginary tales of so-called UFO contact situations, etc., Myers are the only, and this is very important, Myers are the only substantiated contacts because it's the most suppressed and the most important story in human history. Many people don't know that his clear daytime UFO photos, films, sound recordings, metal samples have already been authenticated by scientific experts. Now, this is highlighted, folks, scientific experts. And this is going back to Wendell Stevens and Lee and Britt Elders. This is how far back it goes. We're talking about the 70s here. But while Myers' hundreds of examples of still irreproducible physical evidence establishes it as the only authentic UFO contact case, Michael claims there's an even higher standard of proof. This is very important, gang, because you're going to find out about this evening. Billy Myers has published volumes of the most specific, prophetically accurate scientific information in history. We can take the UFO out of the equation entirely, and we're faced with Myers' ironical information that pretends official discovery. You understand this? Often by decades. And Michael and his warnings about the geopolitical events are equally as well as often disturbingly accurate. And this is a fact, gang, and we're going to be talking about this tonight, the better part of the whole evening, because this is so, so important. Now, Michael is the producer, director of the new Billy Meyer documentary, The Spiritual Teachings in Everyday Life, which is extremely important. gang, because we deal with this on a daily basis. We are not aware of it. The writer, producer, director of the award-winning new film, and Did They Listen, which is produced, of course, by Mr. Horn, as well as the co-producer of the new documentary, As the Time Fulfills. And that will be the ending part of this, because time is fulfilling and prophecies are coming to fruition, gang, which presents an abundance of, ironclad, prophetically accurate scientific evidence that irrefutably and authenticates the Billy Meyer case. Michael, those words are really prophetic in the sense that I've been following this for a very, very long time, as you and I have talked on and off throughout the years. And it is more than disturbing at this point in time, as we're seeing these transitions come to our present value. We're looking at these things and we're watching them unfold, and no one is truly aware of all this information that has been given by this man and his contacts, the Pleiadians. And it's disturbing. What's more disturbing to me now than ever, Michael, is that nobody is really paying attention. And as you so prophetically put, and did anybody listen? Here we are. Things are falling apart. We're watching economies implode. We're watching governments implode. We're watching all kinds of craziness happen, and nobody has listened to a word that this man said. As a matter of fact, not only did they not listen, they've tried to assassinate him now, 23 times? Or maybe better? I don't know.
No, 23.
Yeah, it
Yep.
is mind-boggling, my friend. But before we get into Meyer, I want people to know who you are and why you got involved in all this, and what your mission and your life's goal, and how it came to be for you to become part of the Billy Meyer prophecies, the saga, the mystery of Billy Meyer, how do I say this? The unveiling of his information, because I know you also work with Randolph Winters, and you were with him, and most people probably don't know what I'm talking about, but you certainly do, and how this all came to be, Michael.
Well, okay, I'll tell them who I am, but somebody has to send me some dark chocolate if I reveal the truth here.
I will send you a case of dark chocolate, Michael.
Okay, good. All right. So the kind of the genesis of the whole thing is I walked into a bookstore in L.A. in 1979. There was the first photo book of, staring me in the face, so to speak. I bought it and looked at it and read all the material inside of it, and cover to cover many, many times. And then it was not until about 1986 that I was able to obtain the first 1,800 pages of what are called the contact reports or the contact notes, and those being, at that time, the transcripts of the conversations that Meyer himself had single-handedly, obviously, transcribed, the period being about late January 78 until sometime 75 to sometime in 1978. That was the first 1,800 pages that were translated into English and transcribed. And after that, it was a matter of my reading and studying, and then noticing things that were popping up in the news as new discoveries, which, because I had been fascinated by my reading of the Meyer material, triggered me to go, wait a minute, I already know that. Wait a minute, I already know that. How could I know that? And I would, reach under the bed where these 100-page blocks of transcriptions and translations were. I would find the specific material information that was now being purported, and reported as new discoveries, And I started basically somewhere around, well, 88 was the first time that I got, noticed a so-called new discovery. And from then on, within the next couple of years, I was then actively, noting all this stuff. And as time progressed and I had more internet savvy and technology available, I started to do more searches. Other people contributed a lot to that. And to date, we have over 200 specific examples of Myers' scientific and geopolitical prophetically accurate information.
So in a nutshell, you basically got involved with this by walking into a bookstore. This is interesting to me, Michael, is that, you're basically not looking for anything, but you were drawn to this. In your eyes, do you believe that you were led to this information, by other sources?
That whole thing about, being led, the information in the Meyer case is very interesting, especially what's called the spiritual teaching. And that explains a lot about how life works, better than any source I've ever found. It's in books. There's a lot of free stuff on my site and other places. And with that as a kind of an introduction, what I would say is sometimes when we feel led, we are led by aspects of our own being, be it our personality, our memories, our what are called the storage banks, or impulsed from our own consciousness block and things like that, types of information that are simply not even known to, let alone available in what we might call New Age, New Thought, what have you, information. And most of the stuff that we do resonate with or get involved with in terms of, let's say, New Age information, what have you, it relies an awful lot on beliefs and a certain kind of mysticism, whereas while some things in life certainly are mysterious and all of that, everything does, occur and operate according to immutable logical laws. We, at our level of development on Earth, are not really very aware of, nor in control of, for sure, how things do work in many, many ways. So the things that we get as an intuition or a inspiration or something, all of this stuff accords with the spiritual teaching and accords with how we can study, what we can study and learn from the stuff in the Meyer material. There are occasions, according to the information in the Meyer material, in the case, where people have been so-called impulsed, let's say by the Pleiaren, for certain purposes to initiate medical or scientific developments, or even the creation of certain media, movies and things for the purpose of bringing information into our world. When that happens, it's said to be beyond rare that anyone would know that was what was occurring. When we get ideas, we generally think something pops into our head and we either do something with it or we don't. So the free will aspect is always there as well. Because Robert, what you've opened up here is, an interesting kind of line of, discussion that could go many ways. But I, for the moment, only want to say that if we understood that life itself is, the existence is miraculous in and of itself. Wait a minute, how did everything come into being? Certain core foundational, fundamental questions. The universe itself now operates by its own immutable laws, which govern everything, but which also allow for free will. Those immutable laws, such as the law of cause and effect, is an immutable law. What goes out comes back, one way, shape, or form. But other laws... Yeah, go ahead.
Michael, really quick. To explain the definition of a mutable law, we need to break this down so people understand this, because immutable, it's unchangeable. It's not.
Right.
It's not relegated to a thought that can whimsically change this set of circumstances that we are now living in. We need a breakdown of this because it's so controversial in and of itself.
Well, let's put it this way. When I say immutable law like cause and effect is an immutable, unchangeable law. But it doesn't mean that we cannot correct certain causes before they pass the point of no return into an inescapable prediction. A prediction itself is something that's expressed as 100% certainty and unalterable. It isn't a prophecy. And it may also certainly accord with the laws of cause and effect. These are usually things of a cosmic origin, like a meteor coming into the solar system, or an eruption of a volcano that wasn't precipitated by some kind of man-made activity. And of course there are plenty that aren't, but there's more and more that the relationship is clearly there. However, just to be clear, when something goes out, when that pendulum goes out, if we haven't launched it in the right direction in the right way, and we still can alter the course intelligently and correctly, then we don't get the wrecking ball coming back and cleaning our clock.
Okay. I got you. Oh boy, I got you, because you just opened a can of worms for me, Michael. I mean, first of all, I got so many questions. We're never going to be able to get through this, but okay. So the Pleiorans, okay. Well, I mean, why? How do I put this? How and what was their reasoning for contacting Billy to begin with? I mean, because we know that there are hundreds of millions, probably billions of different species throughout this universe, this little micro bubble we call a universe, okay? But yet the Pleiorans come to us and say, look, okay, they come here, they say, we're going to give you a lot of information because you guys are facing a lot of challenges that are going to be coming up, right? And we're going to give you the playbook, how to avoid 99% of all the disasters that are coming up, which most likely, for the most part, are, derived by man. So they come into the picture. They lay out all this information for all of us, Michael, and nobody pays attention. Why do the Pleiorans? And this is one of the things I never got a chance to ask you, but I'm asking you now. Why would they even bother with such a subhuman species, in your opinion?
Oh, okay. Well, regarding the Pleiaren and what this is about, this didn't start now, today, yesterday, or even 75 years ago with Billy Meyer. Now, what I want to always do, certainly at this point is a good one to do it, I like to say according to the information in the case, because there's things that I cannot prove, nor can I disprove them. There's plenty we can prove, and in my opinion, and now the opinion of others, because fortunately, I'm not the only person in the world, neither are you, that know about this and understand that it's authentic. There are, certainly compared to the population of the planet, we're quite infinitesimal. But this is all part of what has indeed been calculated to the best possible degree, and there are certain places where things can't or couldn't be calculated. So, with that being said, this phase of this mission really began about 13,500 years ago. And it wasn't, just Billy Meyer appearing today. What is said in this case is the following, that this information that is really centered around what's called the spiritual teaching, which is not a belief system, was never intended to be made into a religion, cults, sects, etc. This information, which is beyond ancient, this is how the universe works, how life works, the laws, if you will, of creation which are not designed to punish human beings. They are guidelines. They are recommendations. In some cases, they are immutable laws that it's wise if we know how they operate. Now, this is brought forward for the first time by a prophet that we know as Enoch. In this material, they call him Henoch. Then there's Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, which is the true name of the person falsely known as Jesus Christ, a person, a human being who never existed, never walked the earth, and for whom there is actually zero historical evidence. There's plenty of myth and all the rest. Moving along to the sixth prophet would be Muhammad, who we're told as well brought forward the same information, and then Billy would be the last one, but let's back it up and explain that at the time of all the previous prophets, there were very few people who could read and write the languages of the time. So what happened was, and this happened critically at the time of Emmanuel, with his scribe, his true scribe was Judas Iscariot, not Judah Iscariot. These were two different people, the latter being a son of a Pharisee who was the true betrayer. It's all in the new book, the Talmud Emmanuel. But let me try to stick to this because there is so much here. So you have this spiritual teaching being brought to the people of earth by in the form of a prophet each time who was working with the Pleiaren, who were always, far more technologically and spiritually advanced, but weren't and aren't perfect beings. They're still human, as advanced as they are, with all the technological and consciousness-related abilities. Whenever human beings are involved, things can and will ultimately get royally screwed up, and then they have to be straightened out over and over.
Well, Michael, let me straighten you out on that. It's 100% guaranteed it always goes wrong.
Yeah, and then, it has to be fixed. So this is because mistakes are part of human life and part of evolution, and in and of themselves, to make a mistake is no spiritual crime. Of course, it can always depend on what the mistake is, but to repeat the mistake is not a sign of wisdom. It isn't that they would repeat the mistake so much as they would work with the next, determined prophet in the ensuing times over hundreds and thousands of years to try again to bring the information into still relatively primitive and barbaric people. Well, the same thing as today. In a way, we just have high-tech weapons to do each other in with.
Well,
and go ahead.
I was just going to say, Michael, why are prophets even brought into this realm of such low-level consciousness? I mean, that's my point. I mean, okay, we have all these prophets that try and guide us in a certain direction of civility and kindness and love and morality, and yet every time these prophets come in, they're rejected, put on the stake, they're burned, they're stabbed, they're shunned. You name it, they've done it to people of wisdom. Why? Why do they? It's almost like a lost cause, saying, okay, we'll give it one more shot. Let's give it one more shot. Let's give these SOBs one more shot at reality. Why? Why does this reoccur?
Let's exchange the word prophet for teacher.
Yeah.
Because
okay.
All right. So you have a school, and the school has, kindergarten and on up, and then you get into high school, and then you get into the next level of schooling, and you always have instructors who have information to teach. It is not guaranteed that every student is going to want to learn, grasp the information, apply it, etc. It's kind of an as above, so below gig. So what you have is also a concept that we have in our world as well amongst ourselves, which is those who are more evolved, more advanced, more educated, whatever, more, have a certain kind of a duty in the best sense to assist those who are not at that level, to help them, get a hand up on that rung on the ladder, not to do it for them, but to help them prepare themselves for that next step, for that growth, for that progress. And it's really very much that. It's even in the material, the Pleiaren have a self-obligated mission whereby they work with, evolving races. We're not the only one. We might be the most messed up one, but we're not the only one. And they cannot come directly into a world to contact people openly unless and until that world is a space traveling world, meaning the peoples of that world have entered into true space travel. They have mastered certain things. They're at a certain level of reality in terms of knowledge and understanding, and they can be approached and not cause the kind of a mess that the forefathers of the Pleiaren and other advanced extraterrestrials created every time in the past they appeared here representing themselves as our gods and lording it over the primitive Earth humans and setting in motion the dastardly religions which, as Asket told Meyer in about 1953, would, during these times, come together against each other in a tremendous, terrible war when fundamentalist religions would be at their heyday with irrationality and terrorism and all the rest of it peaking, and the prognosis for survival, there's many iffy factors involved, and things have gotten worse in many ways. That even there's recent information about what's really going on with certain levels of weapon development and countries, what they're doing. And most of this traces back to the United States of America and its utterly demonic, pathological, covert, plans and acts of overt aggression, over 200 such since 1947, against peoples and countries that never did anything to us. The kind of motto, we want what's yours and we're going to take it if you don't give it to us. That's what the country operates on, and all the rest is the window dressing and the huge farce that people have just continued to suck up so long as they can play with their techno toys and numb themselves out with entertainment and other meaningless things, most entertainment these days being centered around violence anyhow. So we're screwed, and that's a fact. The reason for the mission, even knowing, because the actual prediction, not the prophecy, the prediction of the utter and complete destruction of the United States of America, kind of by how and who and what it ends up looking like, was by the prophet Jeremiah about 10,000 years ago or whatever.
Michael, let me stop you right there. It pretty much baked into the cake. So I think the Pleiadians already knew this. They already knew this for thousands of years. Yet they came here, contacted Billy, and I think others, of course, much more substantially, but Billy being the go-to guy at this point, right? With the hundreds of predictions that have already come true. And folks, you can go look this up. I put it in the chat. Go to the website, go to the predictions page, and look it up. It's all there. It's black and white.
Let's cover a little bit of that. Michael, can you tell us some of the predictions that have come true so far?
Oh my God! I mean, there's, this is the funny part about it. Quite literally, I mean, I'll have to just kind of, get my mind to focus on that because there are so many, and most of them are in the sciences. But let me just randomly, because some are popping up. In 1951 through 58 and 64 and on up, Billy Meyer, as I say, beginning in 1951, is the first person to specifically predict. They never publish theories. They only publish information, and sometimes it's prediction, sometimes it's a discovery. Well, okay. From 51 on, unnatural man-made climate change, climbing global warming, ultimately leading to another ice age, 2 American wars with Iraq, Gulf Wars. The second one would be led by a president who would be the son of a former president. It would lead to a terrible disaster and terrorism. The fall of the Berlin Wall, naming AIDS by name in 1958, foretelling the rise of radical Islamist fundamentalist terrorism that would spread irrepressibly worldwide. That's 1958. 1981, Meyer specifically foretells the coming destruction of France, which has some of the events have already occurred, such as some of the rioting and burning and stuff that's going on in France, but that is still the tip of the iceberg. France will fall from within first to Islam. It'll be conquered externally also by Russia, possibly China too. The Ebola epidemic, not an outbreak, but the epidemic, there's a big distinction. We're now into the 1987 Hanok prophecies. The Russians moving their troops to a remote place called Arkhangelsk. I knew nothing about it, had to look it up. That's in the 87 prophecies. They did that, and Russians moved their troops through in 2012, where they have now a huge military base. It just goes on and on and on.
Michael, just to be clear here, you were speaking privately, and I just need to let everybody know that when I asked you, I said, well, the Enoch prophecies, they're still prophecies, and you said to me, no, they're not prophecies anymore, they're predictions, because we are long past the point of no return on this. Is that still factual and correct?
I would say for the most part. There could be some things in there that don't fulfill, quite possibly. It's still possible, but right now, I mean, the warnings that Meyer has published for us to not provoke Russia, those go back decades and decades, because when you go back to the Hanok prophecies, I'm saying from 1987, but they actually originated about 10,000 years ago, Hanok prophesies. And the names of the countries didn't exist then. He described them in his terms at that time. And when the Plejaren brought the prophecies to Meyer, they said, we're giving you these prophecies in the contemporary language. Okay, but they said, basically the United States of America, first of all, they said that there would be, because of the U.S. and its ceaseless, attempts at policing the world and globalization, it would provoke enormous a resistance in the world and all, and it would suffer terrible catastrophes. One would be the destruction of the WTC, i.e. the World Trade Center, by terrorists. And this would only be the beginning of events that would be unbelievable to the people of Earth.
Michael, can I stop you right there for a second? Because, pretty much all the people who have been investigating and involved in the the unearthing or discoveries of what really actually happened in 9/11 have kind of come to the conclusion that this has been it has been an inside job. It was done by our own government and other governments involved. Did the Plejorans talk to Billy about this, or what was
yes.
Was this internalized within the conversations that Billy had with the Plejorans?
He was, as I said, he's first warned about this in 1987, but they also mentioned something to him about it in 86 and again in 89. And what is said by them, and they've been very firm, this was not set up by the U.S. government. The actual facts are that information, that warnings were coming to the powers that be, especially the CIA. They said George Tenet had information that he didn't apparently turn over, that, oh gosh, I've got to remember here.
Sorry,
that
take your time, Mike.
Yeah, well, there's so much. The real problem was that they were derelict, and so it was effectively allowed to happen. Now, they don't go into whether or not Dick Cheney took advantage of this and was complicit in shutting this down or that down. At this point, it doesn't matter. What they're very clear about is that they said that this was not an inside job in the way we think. It's just that there were parties, I think they named 3 people, and George Tenet was one, who could have prevented this and didn't. And they said that when the buildings were struck by the planes, what actually happened to bring them down, whatever else may have been in those buildings, what they said was the fuel from the planes and all this stuff, when those planes exploded in there, when the fires, they got so hot that the aluminum was literally vaporizing it interacted negatively with the sprinklers that were going off in the building, and that created a tremendous heat, tremendous fires that just melting things down. I'm sure, like all of us, I too, when I watched it on TV, I said, gosh, it looks like controlled demolition. They simply said, no, that was not the case. And I saw something else a couple months ago. There was a building that burned similarly. I don't know if it was in Iran or someplace, but all I can say is this. While people can debate that, I can't prove it one way or the other. Nobody's going to be able to probably. I say to people at this point, for all the people that get so passionate about truthing and all, folks, start moving on, because what's coming our way geopolitically, meaning through terrorism and wars and other things economically, and what's coming our way environmentally is going to make all of this 9/11 stuff fade into irrelevancy. None of us can really comprehend it at this point, I think.
Well, Michael, our focus and my focus, and I know Bad Baby's focus, and a lot of other people's focus in this realm of reality is the geophysical reality of what we're living in. We're watching, as we speak, 6.0 earthquakes as a norm now. This has become the norm. We have extreme weather taking place in all parts of the globe, which they've never happened. And I know you're well aware of all this. Extreme heat, extreme cold, just sinkholes opening up, which people had never heard of before. Volcanic activity has gone off the charts, as well as, meteorites coming into Earth's atmosphere. We're a better part of now, around 5,500 per year, and it looks like it's accelerating. It's getting larger as we're going through these events. Whatever part of space we're going through right now seems like to be accelerating all these events that are taking place. We talk about Planet X. We talk about geothermic events that are taking place on the planet, which we have never seen before. Now, I know that Billy was privy to all this information. One thing I need to be specific about, Michael, is in the 2012 event, Billy was given information, and the Pleiadians basically said, please do not tell the rest of the world of what is taking place. They were specific. Do not give out too much information about what is happening.
Well, that pertains to sometimes to other things, but with all the things we're talking about here, I think we really should tighten the focus and say this. Okay, literally from 1948 on, when Svath described to Billy the coming eruptions in central Italy, in northern Europe, and then ultimately here with Yellowstone, with the undersea volcanoes that will become more active, all this stuff that will be starting in 2018 and intensifying, and all the stuff we know. We can sit around, of course, and go, doom and gloom, and things that pertain to, space, there's nothing we can do about. That's yet a whole other thing. The point of it, with all the prophecies and stuff, all this stuff was intended, in my opinion, to say, it kind of went like this. Here are the UFOs. That's the eye candy. Do we have your attention? Here's the prophecies. Notice how impeccably accurate they are. Now, you might ask, well, what's the reason for this? Here's the spiritual teaching, and that's the reason for it. And if you folks can pry yourself away from your irrational, lunatic, bloodthirsty, mind-enslaving religions long enough to not go down the drain with them, if you can take back your power from all these false leaders and power-hungry politicians and false systems that you've set up to control yourselves, then maybe you will get about the business of trying to assure your own threatened future survival, because otherwise, if you don't wake up and don't start thinking, all that is otherwise going to happen will wipe you out.
Michael, let me ask you something. I mean, you just brought up something very, very poignant. I mean, we're basically killing ourselves over stupidity and ignorance. That's a fact. It's more than evident to me anyway. I don't know about others, but it's more than evident to me. I mean, what's to say to just like a person like myself who is aware of all this to say, you know what, I'm so done with all this. Why do I have to continue to live in this, you know, this blissful ignorance that everybody else has created, but which I am so self-aware of, and say, you know what, I don't care, let it all end, and then I'll just continue on another planet where, you know, which you and I both know,
way.
Reincarnation is very real, though.
Yeah, but
it's
we don't
very,
get
very
to trip,
real.
We don't get to trip off to another planet. You reincarnate on the planet on which you die. The only exceptions being if you are a space-traveling race and you go to another world and you die there, you'll reincarnate there. Or if the planet that you're living on is destroyed, you know, blown to pieces or whatever you want to call it,
well, but that's what I was getting to. The destruction of this planet. That's my point. That's where I was getting.
I have a quick question. Are they trying to help us stop the destruction of the planet and change the alter the future? Is that the whole purpose of them coming and talking to Billy, or were they trying to warn us of what's going on? What's the point of them coming?
The only way they can help us change our future and survive is not by doing anything for us. They can't come here and, well, we'll stop that bomb and we'll get rid of that false leader and we'll stop that war. We have free will. They know that. Right. They, as human beings, have been through their own dreadful messes for thousands of years until they straighten themselves out. And they know that we are at a crossroads. The only thing that they're allowed, if you will, to do, so they don't screw us up even worse, because coming into our world would mess things up even worse than we're messing it up, because that would drive so many billions of people crazy. There'd be attacks and wars and suicides and psychosis and murder. Okay, they don't need that on their hands. Their forefathers created the religions. That's already produced enough of that. So what they do is they insert into our world the operating manual, the spiritual teaching, how to think, how each thought that you think creates a feeling, creates a thought, creates an action 24/7, whether you're aware of it or not, and how the world that we are now wringing our hands about is the result of irrational human thinking. We don't get to run away from it as much as we don't like it. We can live very wonderful and peaceful lives even in the midst of this thing going south, however far south it wants to go. But if we get this message right here and now while we're speaking, if we understand, we won't go on to another, well, but what about this and what about that and what about this and what about that? That's all. The world is the world. It is the mess it is because of the way human beings have been corrupted in their thinking and the feelings and actions, and that has largely been because we embraced absolutely insane and irrational religions and politics. It's our fault. It's our responsibility.
So let me ask you, Michael, did the Palladians tell Billy that most of the masses is under mind control and that we have to break away from being mind controlled? Is this the point?
Well, that's in there as well, because the mind control is, when we use that term, we usually think technologically. Meyer's the first person, before Snowden and Assange and all that, to tell us that Microsoft had a back door into all the computers, that there are things that are deliberately beamed through televisions and computers and every device that we have, that all this stuff is monitoring. He told it years ago, before this came out. So on that level, there's mind control, but we still have the freedom to control our minds and control our thoughts, and that's a fundamental part of what's called the spiritual teaching. It's called 100% self-responsibility. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't run into things from other people's actions and all that stuff that we have to deal with. It means that we can, to the best of our abilities, when we start taking conscious control of our minds and not plunging along in whatever line of thinking we run on circular tracks like, horses running around in a race, we have to stop. And those of us that know that things are going down the drain, it's even more important to us, if for nothing else but our personal lives, to get off the whole thing. We don't, honestly, folks, we don't need another person to claim that they're in contact with ETs, as if that means something.
Right.
We don't need another person to tell us that they've been abducted or deducted or producted or anything by imaginary aliens, which are all military operations. We need people to say, it's time to take back control over your thinking, to join together with other people to find out what is. What is. That's it. See things as they really are and start moving from there, not wringing our hands about all these things.
Michael, let me ask you this. There have been many prophesied written texts that have been written throughout the times. The most recent would be, in my thought process that I'm thinking about right now, would be the Rancha book, right?
That mess.
Yeah,
piece
exactly.
Of crap.
Right, but my point is that these things come down through time. Who's ever downloaded whatever information, if they're downloaded or it's just an imaginary thing that's being made up in their mind, and putting out some thought of, where we should go, how we should be, how we should act.
Well, what's the point, Robert? What's the point of it? What is the point?
But that's the point I was getting to, is that, like, for instance, the Bible. I know it's a totally fabricated piece of written information manipulated throughout many hands throughout centuries. The overall projected thought. Right, but the overall projected thought of that is that, what I get from it and what I hope that most people get it from it, it's, be kind to each other, be good to each other, don't be cruel, don't kill each other. Yet there's the opposite side of what in the writings is projected, is that I am your master, I rule over you. If you don't follow my thought process, you're going to burn in hell, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and you're going to go through the other thing.
Yeah, but Robert, we just see here, this is what I have to call us up short on. What I was saying before is the purpose of the spiritual teaching, when it first was brought to earth and all this time to the current time, was to help us to learn how to think. Certainly, any of the nice things, look, if every religion on earth operated only by the tenets of the golden rule, number one, there'd be no need for religions. Number two, things would be fine. They don't, they aren't, and that's why there is a final time when now this material is brought forward, because in the calculations on the part of the Plejaren and any others involved, they know it's going to take about 800 years before the mass of humanity has finally come to a place where it can think straight.
You're talking about 800 years from where we are right now?
About, give or take,
okay.
A chunk of time. The point is this, that this material, for the most part, not entirely, for the most part, these are the seeds for the future, and we know that seeds require manure to grow in, and there's plenty of manure. But those of us who don't have to wait, who don't feel that we have to wait 200 years or 800 years to catch on, we can study this now and not go back worrying about the Bible and worrying about this and wondering about that. There are things going on in the world that if we knew about it, we'd be paralyzed and immobilized because we wouldn't be able to deal with the kind of evil that is conducted by the ignorant humans on this planet. So who cares right now? You and I, we are talking about something that we can do something about in our own lives now, today. Tons of free information on my website, which is They Fly. There's a thing called Elements of the Spiritual Teaching, the Spiritual Teaching. Start reading. Start looking at the difference between the distractions and the nonsense and the New Age run around in circles, never get anywhere without evidence stuff, and teaching from very, very, very wise people going back millennia upon millennia, who are far more advanced than we are and who themselves live by the principles of the spiritual teaching, not dictates. They're not controlled by some belief system. And we have to retrain our minds to not keep looping back to all the loopy stuff. The time has passed for that. 2018 will be bringing us things that will be very sobering, as if we haven't already started to see them. We have.
Well, Michael, you talk about 2018, and I've talked to you about this in the past. I mean, and I've mentioned this every time, I've always talked about, the Juan de Fuca Cascadia plate going. I mean, I'm seeing so much activity happening on the planet physically. I'm talking about geologically.
Meyer is the first person in 2005 to specifically warn about the coming Northwest earthquake, which will run for 5 straight minutes at 9.0, will produce a tsunami that will come in outside, from offshore of Portland and come rushing in, followed by another huge quake and another tsunami. In 2008, 3 years later, Oregon State University came out with almost exactly the same information that Meyer verifiably published before anybody. He's already explained that the La Palma, the Cumbre Vieja volcano in Marianas, is going to blow, and the potential to lose 20 million Americans along the eastern seaboard is very high. All this stuff has been put out there. Now, we can get lost with that and things that you and I right now can't do anything about, or we can go, wait a minute, what's the stuff about learning how to think so I can live better? That's where people should be going. Forget this other stuff. So, that's it.
That's what we're all about, Michael, is trying to wake people up and tell them, don't run around like Chicken Little, the sky is falling. Get a grip and prepare to deal with what's coming our way.
In every way. And that means, yes, of course, physical preparation, but the most important part of all of this is to learn the control of the thinking and of the mind, so that people suddenly, when things happen that they just aren't prepared for, they aren't paralyzed, they aren't destroyed by it, they aren't, crippled for the rest of life if they survive it, because they're so shattered and don't have a means of thinking and recovering and all the rest of this. So that's why this material is here. There is a reason. You had mentioned earlier
about the coming fall of America. Are you talking about these natural disasters, or are you talking about us coming under attack with war?
According to Meyer, in 2012, he reiterated what the Play-Iron told him, which is, if the people of America don't change certain things, the superpower United States of America will cease to exist after 2020. Now, that doesn't mean we're blown up then. It means United States of America. Remember, Meyer is the first person to specifically predict 2 coming civil wars. He predicted it first in 81 and again in 87. And when I first read it, I laughed. Who would have thought even 2 years ago, I read it in 86, but who would have thought 2 years ago that we're going to have civil wars? We're in the beginning phases of civil wars. We're going to see the radical left. We've already seen it start, and it will keep provoking. It will ultimately be met with force by the various parties on the right that have long been prepping for such a thing, and the country breaks up effectively into 4 or 5 territories under also the influence of various religious kinds of dictatorial rule. These things have long been foretold. And then, yes, geophysical, geological, we have terrorism to contend with. That there's about 1,400 or more ISIS sleepers already in this country. Meyer was given that information. We have coming natural disasters, and then when we finally provoke Russia into war, which they don't want, they will completely annihilate this country. And
Michael, does that have to do with what's going on in North Korea right now to provoke these circumstances that we're looking at?
The provocation for war with Russia and China extends back more than 40 years. It's been underway for a long time because the covert actions of our secret military and intelligence agencies is to try to destroy Russia. Always has been. Russia has never really tried to destroy us. Yes, we had our Cold War and all that stuff. There are things going on now where our government is trying to get a hold of a lot of genetic material from Russian people so they can geo-engineer a species-specific poisons and toxins to kill Russian people. And not only that, this is being done by a number of, this was just revealed to Meyer in October. This kind of stuff is underway, and all the BS you hear in the news and all the truly fake news and everything else, these things are terrible. There's elements of it that are true. There's distractions, but it will not serve us to focus on it unless we have some way to speak up, throw our voice into something. But it is so past the point of no return in that way. The demonic, corrupted mental cases who are in the higher levels of military and intelligence, all that, are pushing for a war with Russia, which we would have been in if Hillary Clinton had won. Meyer has told us too. And fortunately, that particular psychopath wasn't allowed to win. And, this isn't about politics, Republicans and Democrats. The insanity level in this country, the player and already told Meyer, 50% approximately of the American people are psychopaths. That's just the way they think, the way they are. So you can imagine how well represented that is in the real powers that be structure, our government, our Congress, all these phonies. Okay, well, we can wring our hands about it or yell about it. Forget it. Do what you can, but start getting your thinking straight and joining together with like-minded people, being effective in interconnection with like-minded people, so you will be able to sense where to be, where to go, when to do this and that, and work cooperatively with other people. This thing is going down, and I can't give you the date, and I can't give you what it looks like in all ways, but Meyer told me more than 10 years ago. I said to him, is the Iraq War fundamentally about oil? He said, no, it's fundamentally about your dollar. When things go a certain way, you may as well roll cigarettes with your paper money. We're on the verge of that right now. So
yeah, we are.
All I want to say, I don't want to go back. I don't mind expressing this so people understand what this case is about. All the rest of the UFO stuff, if you could flush it down the toilet and never look at it again, your life would be happier. It's crap. Nobody has any evidence. Most of the people out there talking are profit-seeking charlatans. And I'll tell it to each of their faces, and I've done it at every opportunity. They suppress the Meyer case knowingly, and that goes for Stephen Greer and Stephen Bassett.
Well, you just struck my chord, because you and I had that conversation, and I said, if he were an upright kind of guy and wasn't preaching that all aliens are goody two-shoes and they're all here to help us, and if he was just being honest about it, I would have paid attention to him. But you know what? He blatantly just lied to my face. I'm not talking about anybody else's. I'm talking about me personally. He lied to my face. And
he doesn't know anything about
total distrust for me.
Look, it doesn't matter. Robert, this is what I'm trying to get across. This whole UFO thing doesn't matter, except the negative potential of it, like a fake ET attack and this crap with Tom DeLonge and to the Stars Academy, another setup. All these things are setups to milk people, to misdirect them, to corrupt their brains, so they chase lights in the sky and worry about mainly imaginary aliens, and they can't do anything about it anyway. The one thing we can do about it is learn how to think, study truth, determine for ourselves if it works, and get on with life and get away from this crap. This takes a lot of courage for people. Everybody wants to talk about aliens, and forget it. What has it brought anybody in the last 20 years except chasing your tail while you chase lights in the sky?
You know what it's brought, Michael? Excitement and money.
Don't they, Michael?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
They use a lot of fear-mongering.
Well, yes, and look, unfortunately, it's made more things to be afraid of in certain ways, but it isn't even about the UFO community, the whole UFO thing, MUFON, all that stuff. It's garbage. It's garbage. Forget it. If you knew that somebody brought a load of garbage in your house, are you going to keep on going over and rummaging through it? Do we not get it by now? It delivers nothing.
But Michael, most people rummage through that garbage looking for that freaking, that diamond in the rough. That's the problem with the humanity and the way they think.
But that doesn't matter. It's us now, you, me, meaning those of us discussing and listening and thinking about what's being said tonight. This is it's not about UFOs or ETs, even about prophets or any of that. We've been delivered something that we claim to be looking for. The truth of the matter is this: the confirmed existence of extraterrestrial space-traveling life would be the single most important discovery in human history, which would only be exceeded by contact with such a race, and then we'd have to know the reason. All of that has been fulfilled. Are we going to get off of our stuck records and move on and avail ourselves of all that's free? And if we want more, we can buy books or films or whatever. But, folks, the drain it just goes down.
It's circling the drain. I know what you mean, Michael.
Yeah.
But really quick, I mean, and you and I have had this disagreement in this thought process, that there have been way too many people on this planet, starting with many contacts. I'm not talking about the Pleiorans, okay? I'm talking about the little gray guys with the big heads.
They are
and the
not
big
gray
eyes.
guys, Robert. Those are not extraterrestrials.
Right.
Those are androids.
Let me finish my before you jump on me. Before you jump on me, let me finish my statement. I mean, the drone crafts come down. The androids are on there. We recover these drone crafts. We recoup their technology, back engineer, and now we have this breakaway civilization. This is what I was getting to. So we have these android type beings, right?
No.
Hold on.
They're not here.
Right. I know they're not here, but my point is that we were able to take that technology from these downed crafts and back engineer it and create this breakaway civilization. I want to know what the Pleiorans say about this and what Billy says about this.
What they've said is the following, to the best of my knowledge. Yes, there were crashes here and in other countries, and in some cases, these living android, it's a highly developed technological creature which is not a human being. They are, when you think of AI, what we're moving towards, in a couple thousand years, we would have that kind of development with these types of androids. We don't have it now. The reverse engineering did not give us true interplanetary craft. We don't have a base on Mars. We don't have all this stuff that is from the disinformation industry. It defies logic and reason for many, many, many reasons. I mean, you land your first craft on Mars, you think you're good. People are suddenly building stuff. Where are they getting all the water? Where are they getting the fuel? It's not happening. What's happening is we're being fed more distraction so we can worry about breakaway civilizations and androids and all this stuff. The Greys, those androids, they were not extraterrestrials. There was a certain number. They're dead by now.
Michael, somebody had to create them, though. Who created them?
The people in the Zeta Reticulum galaxy who send those things out as probes and discovery, doing research for themselves.
That's what I meant. But that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, but those people, to the best of my knowledge, and if it gets updated and I know about it, I'll tell you, the Zeta Reticulum people didn't come here. They sent these craft for their own reconnaissance and information gathering. There are other extraterrestrial races, from what the Pleiorans have said, just actually very small number, but who have been monitoring without contact and interaction the Earth for a long time. It's a matter of interest and curiosity to them for whatever reasons. Pardon me, they do not contact and interact with people. Occasionally their craft may be sighted. Most craft are secret military. Some are extraterrestrial. But again, why would we go back to worrying about it? Forget extraterrestrials for now, unless there's some real reason that we're going to go, hey, wait a minute, this is just good. But you know what? For 75 years, Billy Myers, since a 5-year-old boy, goes on real extraterrestrial craft meets with these people. He meets with them on the craft. He meets in the office. He's meeting in fields or wherever. It's for a purpose. It isn't for the, pardon me, GD technology, nor to dazzle us. We are in trouble. Every one of us is at risk.
But Michael, we like shiny little trinkets. That's the problem with the human race. We like the shiny little trinkets.
That's only the problem if we don't grasp what we're talking about right now.
Exactly. I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree with you 100%.
So, Michael, how do we get out of trouble?
Right. That's the right question. And the answer, as I said before, is this is a slow process because we have dug the hole for so long and so deep. We don't simply go, oh, wait, where's the ladder? Oh, gosh, I'm glad we're out of that. The reality, the inescapable reality is that it will take time. And the only time that we have is the present to begin our own individual study, because it's an instruction literally about how to save ourselves, not that it's written in there, the only way you're going to save yourself is it's about how to think so as to create the life you want. Now, I'll mention something very briefly because I know we're running out of time here, I'm sure. I created a book recently. It took me 6 weeks from the time I sat down to write it till when it was formatted, till when it became a hot new bestseller on Amazon. It's a process that I created 32 years ago that I used to do individually with people using video to help them, before I even knew about all the internal stuff in the Meyer case, to help people to set the course of their lives and interact with themselves using devices such as cell phones, tablets, computers, or cameras. I no longer have to sit and do a session with somebody. For $9.99, you can download the darn thing right off of Amazon, read the reviews. This is it because I was inspired to, I came up with this before I knew the spiritual teaching, but basically once I realized that I could put this in the hands of people so they could start to literally, physically, verifiably see themselves creating their own life the way they want it, not the way they're bombarded with it. This is what another means by which I try to direct people, because it couldn't be cheaper. And if I could, I would charge a couple $100 for it, because that's how good the technology, how simple it is. And you can recharge yourself with this. Literally, I don't mean electronic, but energetic. You recharge yourself. You're accountable to yourself. You set your own goal. You accomplish it. You can reuse it. So people then, to answer your question, this is what I'm trying to do, learn who they are, how they work, how to start setting the preferences in life. And then in my book, I link to 6 of Meyer's books, which is the real spiritual teaching. I literally put up a thing on my site saying, I'll pay you to buy this book, because then those people that would send me proof that they bought it, I send them a companion DVD of another process that I created and taught beginning years ago, that I was brought to Europe by a consultant to the late Princess Diana to teach to European government and business people and industrialists, that I created, that Meyer said, teach that every time you can. That's part of the spiritual teaching. I didn't even know that when I created it. So I'm doing this other stuff in my life, in addition to all this representation, to practically give people literally in your hand. Here's your phone. Just here's the book. Do what it says right here. Use your phone, and now you're going to set yourself off on the course you prefer. You won't worry about aliens. You won't worry about UFOs. You're not going to worry about the evil elite, because there's nothing you can do about all that crap. Start getting yourself straight and have a happy life. What else can we ask for here?
But you're right, Michael.
Live for the moment, I guess. Live for today.
It's more than that. You actually end up living truly more functionally for the time that comes and the future incarnations and everything else by getting this one right.
Right. Michael, I just need to say this. I hope that you don't feel that I'm asking some difficult and deep questions, because the reason I'm doing that is because it's my own personal, deep, progressive thought here. And I need to tell you this because I've defended you against many haters. Some particular conversations I had with some people I don't want to mention, but I had deep, one particular deep email conversation with a particular person, and I said to them, you guys are chasing lights in the skies. You're talking about this, you're talking about that. I said the most, undiscovered case in all of this is the Building Meyer deal, and you know what I get every time? It's an attack against you. And the reason why they attack you, Michael, and I know this for a fact now, is because they have nothing to come back at you against. They have rhetorical information. They have, not misinformation, but they have, what's the word I'm looking for? They have.
They have nothing. They have no evidence.
Yeah, right. It's not the evidence. It's this bloated sphere of look here. But if they truly look at the information, it's in a tight little package. The metallurgy, the sound, recorded, engineered stuff. The photographic evidence, which is undisputable in any, I don't care who you bring that evidence to, and I know Billy had almost all of his, not all of it, but a good portion of his photographic evidence stolen, including his negatives, which
not all of it. This is what people don't understand.
I didn't say all of it. I didn't say all of it.
Look, it's all been authenticated even recently in the last couple of years. Then I had this guy who is U.S. Air Force Office of Special Investigation. The guy contacts me out of the blue. I learned ultimately from him he was the former, and he sent me stuff, I saw it, former top-level case supervisor for the U.S. Air Force Office of Special Investigation. He came at me as a skeptic. 9 months later, he called me up. He lives out of the country. He said, I got to tell you something about your Billy Meyer case. I said, what? He said, I really delved into it. It's 100% ironclad. It's authentic. There's no two ways about it. All the skeptics, they don't know what they're talking about, and I will personally take them on for you if you want. I mean, this is... And then I got an email from a former trial lawyer and prosecutor who says to me, I've looked at all your scientific information, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, empirical thinking, great scientific mind. It's real. So courtroom quality stuff. The evidence is real. These people, here's the problem, Robert, if we have to dip back for a moment into these idiots in the UFO community. They are shills. They're trying to make a buck. They write books on imaginary stuff, 23rd-hand information. They run around to the parties that are the little UFO congresses that I no longer get invited to, thankfully, because my last appearances there, I called everybody out by name. They didn't like that. And the thing is that none of these people are qualified investigators. They are unscientific. They're ignorant. I would run over them. Listen, I'm not the only one. I could think of 20 people who could demolish anybody out there lecturing on this BS stuff, whether it's Roswell or Rendlesham or Socorro or whatever, the Nick Popes and the, what's his name, Richard Dolans and all these tired, sleepy academics who are milking something to get the last dollar out of gullible people who have no real discernment when it comes to what is scientific and what isn't. They don't understand means, motive, and opportunity. They don't understand analyzing evidence. They understand none of it. So I don't care if you tell me who the people are. I will invite, I have my own little show on Tuesday nights. I will invite any of these people to come at me and give me their best shot. I've challenged the world's best skeptics. I just took down one of the biggest skeptics who hadn't learned his lessons, a guy named Derek Bartholomew. He puts up a phony website. He steals a film of ours. He steals our names. He completely corrupts information of Myers. And I try to get a website taken down, you guys. I approached his web host last week, and by Monday, his site was down because I was able to show what he couldn't, and that is that he was full of lies, defamation, information that was dangerous to Myers' life, which was false information. So this is the clown circus, is the UFO community. And I'll stick my chin out. Come on, take a swipe and put something up against the Meyer case. It isn't me. Anybody that learns this well enough, understands it, can take on any of these people standing on one foot. They won't do it. They'll attack me. They won't come on and I'll debate with it. I've got nothing. You know what? I don't even personally have an issue with any of these people that I simply don't respect professionally. I will debate any of them. I'll debate all of them. Whatever. Just, you know what we do? We get a presentation. We put up a screen. I show the evidence for the Meyer case, and then they show their evidence, which will take about 13 seconds on their part because none of them have any, and they're pitching. Stanton Friedman. I'm on a roll here because when you start talking about these people, UFO community, I got to tell you this.
You're making me laugh. Stop. You're making me laugh because I know all this in detail.
All right,
I know this.
All right. A couple of years ago, Stanton Friedman and I were invited to have a debate on a show. And I met Stanton Friedman before that up in Canada, nice old grandpa guy, really nothing against him. And I know that he knew about the Meyer case years ago. He knew Stevens and everybody else. So I thought we're going to have a real debate here. When the debate was over, they did a listeners poll. And Stanton Friedman got 234 votes. I think that was the number. I got 17,360. It was a 98% to 2%. He's supposedly an expert in UFOs, doesn't know what he's talking about. He's milking the Roswell cow so he can keep on doing the rubber chicken circuit and spend time with his grandkids. Okay, fine. But you're suppressing the truth. All of you people out there, you're phonies, you're charlatans, you're liars, you're pretenders, and you should be ashamed of yourself for what you've done to try to boost yourselves up on the back of the only authentic case with the only man who has real contact, who's endured attacks not only from idiots like you people out there, but 23 attacks on his life. So the UFO people, anyone, just give them my number. I'm glad to talk to him.
Okay, Michael. So you brought this up, so I'm gonna throw this out there. Okay, Travis Walton, his case. Pretty much undeniable, undisputable. It's as real as the Meyer case. What's your thoughts? Hold on. Let me finish. Hold on. Let me finish. Pretty much, Travis Walton and his group of people who were involved in Travis's abduction, pretty much came up that everything that Travis said and the people that were with him and around him said that this took place. They did the lie detector test. It all came up positive that, what they were saying was real. What's your thoughts? What's Meyer's thoughts, and what's the Playoran's thoughts on this?
I don't know that they've even commented on it. I've met Travis Walton. I think he's a nice guy. I think my take, and I can be gullible too, my take was that he was very sincere, but let's correct what you said. It's nowhere remotely near the Meyer case, and here's why.
I wasn't comparing the two, Michael.
Well, you did.
I was simply saying that was a real case.
It's only a case in as far as this is what the case actually amounts to. Okay. Several people told about an experience they had. And I'm not saying they're lying. I'm going to say for which they have no tangible evidence, and even if they had an experience, they cannot be sure what the experience was, who or what was involved in it. Now, that is true, and even I don't think Travis Walton would disagree with that. While it could be an abduction, by whom? By whom? The military comes to mind first.
Well, but hold on, Michael. Stop.
There's nothing there.
But his description. Why are we going
there, Robert? Why are we talking about that? What value does that have?
Well, the only reason I'm talking about is because you say that the Meyer case is the only case that is the most described.
Can you tell me another case where there is a verifiable, ongoing, now over 8 decades long contacts with one person, 125 eyewitnesses.
You are right.
Then let's not go backwards. I don't care about goddamn lights in the sky.
Okay.
That isn't going to do anything to my survival.
Right, but I'm not talking about the lights in the sky. I'm talking about a circumstance that he went through.
It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. What do you do with it? Whether it was somebody from Zeta Reticulum or somebody from the Nellis Air Force Base, who cares? Who
Okay,
cares?
and I got your point. I got that point. I'm just simply saying that, I think other people. Right. I'm just simply saying that other people have gone through other experiences, Michael, and I don't take that away from people.
I've gone through experiences. The reason I even wrote my Future Self book is because a voice popped in my head in 1972 and said, I am your future self, come to you across a bridge of time, built by you and others like you, that you may know you're an eternal being. It went on to describe 3 specific technologies connecting to healing, 2 of which have already appeared in the world since 1972. The third one is my variation on the future self, is the variation on the third one, because I'm not in the position to do what it described to me, which was full-blown holographic virtual reality without glasses in 1972. So I don't care about people's damn experiences. I care about whether or not we're going to wake the hell up. The Russian people are a tough people.
Yes, they are.
People. They've been warred on and attacked for centuries, and we are raising here in this country a bunch of weak and spineless people who can only run around and play with their cell phones. Forget people's experiences. Who cares? I don't even care about my experiences. I want to know what I can do. And I took my experience and I made something that I'm practically giving away for people so they can begin to, instead of spending their time taking selfies with their stupid cell phones, start setting the course of their life. Christ.
Michael, the only reason. Michael,
let's back
one at a
guys
time.
and talk a little bit about what's coming in the year 2018 and what we can do to prepare for this. I mean, you talk about the fall of the dollar war, destruction through weather on our planet.
Right.
Of course, we're going to have famine. So how do we deal with these things, Michael?
Right. Well, that's a good question. There are people in our world, there are people, probably the people you know or have information about, who work with some of those areas and technologies that have to do with growing food, preserving food, drying food, storing food, working together for shelter, working together for bartering things. This is where we're saying it now. It just means reorient your thinking towards having less of the things that you have to depend on, and who can you be and interdependent with for mutual benefit and survival in worst-case situations. I'm not the first person. You've got a world full of preppers out there, and I'm not even part of that community. And that isn't all of it. You can't just – it's about the thinking. It's about consciousness. It's about getting in touch with the inner self so that the answers are coming more also from within us, because they are there. That's why I do my little –
You said you had a voice in your head that came to you. That was telepathic?
I don't claim that. I think it was a part of me because, look, here, I try to tell this to people. When you go to sleep at night, you have dreams. And some of the dreams we have, let's face it, I'm sure everybody, you've had flying dreams, you've had dreams of this and that color and explosions and all, things. Try to recreate that during a waking moment, and you're going to sit there going, because there's parts of our consciousness that are pretty magnificent that we don't operate consciously. So for me to have heard this thing in my head, I wouldn't say it's somebody. I would never make that claim. See, it's
right.
The difference between somebody saying I was abducted by extraterrestrials and someone saying I had a strange experience I can't explain. So I can say I heard this voice.
Well,
it said this.
I kind of think that someone or some way you're possibly being guided to help humanity.
But whatever the case, if I don't do what I'm guided to do, whether it's somebody that happened to just be blowing through the galaxy and said, oh, hey, listen, here's 3 things, go do something, or it's me, if I don't do something with that, it doesn't matter. It's not about the alluring thing of some guidance. It's really about what are you doing with what you're given. We have been given.
Know what I think? I think we got to get out of the materialistic world. I mean, people that I had spoke at WSO's conference on Planet X, and people would come up to me and say, well, you say store freeze-dried blah, blah, blah. I don't have money by the time the end of the day comes. I have no money, and I flat out came and said, well, do you really need 2 cars? How about all the pictures you have on your walls? How about doing a yard sale? I mean, they're are you going to eat your picture that's hanging on the wall? I mean, there are ways if you really apply yourself, and this is where we have to come out of the, well, I want the new iPhone, though. That's more important.
Right. Well, everybody has a choice, and, I have to, speaking of which, I think I've got to go because I think we went longer than we thought we'd go, right?
Well, no, we actually have about 25
minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was 1 hour.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
Oh, I'm sorry,
right.
Michael. I'm sorry.
Okay. No problem. Well, here's the thing, folks. We will keep reiterating we have been given the game plan. We've been given the instructional book. We've been given the operational manual. It's called the spiritual teaching. A couple of the basic points of it. 100% self-responsibility for everything in your life. Observe and control your thoughts all the time. See things as they really are, and then you can make intelligent, informed, and preferred decisions. This starts to guide us to a life that is not being a ping pong ball, being bounced around by alternating players based on whatever the, momentary interest of the day is paddling us around. We have to start being, as Billy Myers said, the smiths of our own destiny, the controllers of our own life. And that all the rest of it falls more in place. Nobody's getting out of this life alive, including us, so we may as well try to navigate it as safely, as comfortably, as cooperatively and lovingly as possible. That means we want to learn how to think to do that, how to attract goodness and give it in our lives, and simplify things. All the, paranormal, UFO, mystical community, New Age stuff has actually taken us so far from that because it's full of distraction. It doesn't put the responsibility squarely where it belongs, on each of our own shoulders. That territory between our ears is where a lot of this has to take place. And we can certainly center our good feelings in our heart and everything else, but we've got to learn how to think moment by moment. That's, what else can we say? I mean, we can reiterate that all night, but that's not going to help anything. It just isn't going to help.
The sad part about it is, I have heard that the Palladians are actually afraid of us because we're so, we have no compassion for life. We have no, we are so quick to kill one another.
But they're not afraid of us in that way because we can't harm them. They are sad for us being so lost, but they know from their own experience as human beings that we choose and create our lives and our destinies, and that, sad as it may be, to watch this or to observe how futile, our endeavors are, there's nothing more they can do but then to give that which, if we took it in our hands, we would navigate our way out of what we can still navigate out of. And this, that's just the way it is.
Michael, what do you think, Michael, is the point of the elite making these big underground bunkers, and they're going to run there and think they're going to be safe and all that? Is that? Do you think they're going to be safe?
Well, now, here's what I think about it, because as I said, there was information just released today from one of Myers' contacts about how the agenda to basically wipe out lots of people, which, I couldn't believe that would have been true, but they're saying, no, unfortunately it is. They're going to try to, through these engineered diseases, for culturally, racially, ethnically specific peoples, to do war on people by, inflicting disease on them all over the place. Here's the problem with the best laid plans of mice and men thing. you build underground bunkers, and then, oops, an unexpected earthquake rips the thing in half. Or the floods take place so much and enter into all available inputs for the breathing systems or whatever. It's like you can only go so long with this. It's all about me and I don't care about anything else. And then at a certain point, you have trapped yourself in a tomb underground. Great. That's what you want to do?
Yeah.
Well, so I don't worry about that.
Michael, I guess my follow-up question to Badbaby's question would be, so this is what's going on with the geoengineering and all the spraying that's going on worldwide in the skies?
Well, the Pleiaren have said we are mistaken about the spraying. And I was one of the first people that I knew in 2000 that was photographing so-called chemtrails. And when I went to Switzerland that year or the next year, whatever, I was asking them, and they said, no, you're not being sprayed. And then finally Meyer came out with an article. And then there were 2 articles from other people, including a pilot and a meteorologist who agreed with him. And what he said was this: we have so damaged the atmosphere through all the gases and the atomic radiation. Remember, Meyer's the first one to warn about the destruction of the ozone.
Yes.
1950. Okay, so he said, and this information he said he got from the Pleiaren, and I'll go on and address the possibility, but he said, what you're seeing is the response of normal contrails when the atmospheric conditions have changed because of the damage, the man-made damage to the atmosphere. It happens on some days, it doesn't happen on others, and this and that. Now, is it possible that hysteria that got started encouraged people to start to spray something? Yeah, but the other problem is, and there's a couple other problems. One is, if you start spraying the skies, which is a little bit different than we're going to go and, spray this population over here with a disease element and be done with it and let them all develop a disease. You're now putting substances into the air, which will, under the best of conditions, and I, quotes around that, will affect the people right below it, means everybody, your friends, your families, your allies, and let's remember that the wind blows. So there's a lot of things that couldn't be controlled if that was the case. Now, have people started to spray stuff? I guess it's possible, but the hospitals by now, since 2000, when I started calling up news stations worrying about this, the hospitals should be full of people predominantly who are dying from an aluminum barium poisoning, but they aren't. They're dying from cancers and everything else. You don't hear it. Now, is there aluminum and barium in the environment? Yeah, along with mercury and lead and arsenic and everything else. We have been polluting our planet. So we latch on to something and we accept that it's got to be true because it sounds terrible, and then the evil elite are doing it. Well, they're doing bad stuff. There's people doing bad stuff. Most of it's being done with right under our noses. You've got people now, and I didn't vote for Trump, but you've got people trying to nullify the choice of the American populace by impeachment or fiat or whatever you want to call it, because they don't like the results of what their fellow citizens did. This wasn't a guy who just walked in and took over the office in a coup, and we should have a coup to remove him. We are in an insane time with insane people. And every day there's another lunatic who gets exposed as being either a pedophile or a groper or abuser of some form or another. And we have only seen the tip of the iceberg. I remember a few days ago when it was about Al Franken, and I heard Geraldo Rivera I think it was about Franken, that Geraldo Rivera was interviewed on the radio. I was driving, and I listened to his voice, and I thought, this guy's been doing it himself. Yeah, sure enough, he had to apologize today for something with Bette Midler. I mean, we live in a cesspool.
Yes.
This is a cesspool. So that we've got to cure ourselves of being dazzled by whatever toy someone is dangling in front of our face to distract us and get back to taking charge of our own darn lives. Who cares about all this stuff? You go to bed at night and you think, well, what did I do with my mind and my time today? I worried about evil aliens, and I worried about this government thing, and I worried about that scandal, and this. And where did I go in the midst of all this? It's all outside of me. It's all on the internet or this or that. Or this is what's going on, folks. People have been made stupid. We've all succumbed to some degree. We gotta, if you don't want to make a U-turn and get yourself out of this, you're going down with the ship because you won't know when the time comes what to do.
Well, Michael, I mean, we talked about everything tonight, and I'm sorry, I had to be a little in depth about certain things because I want to know, and it's a good conversation. I really enjoy that. We can agree to disagree sometimes, and we can agree to agree most of the time. That's the way I see it. But what is the solution? I mean, the Planarians and all their information that they give an ability, they give the predictions, and even the Enoch prophecies that were prophecies now are coming as predictions. What is it that we need to do? How can we change where we are now? Is there a turnaround solution for where we are now, my friend?
Yeah, so let me say it again. The solution is in turning to a study of how life works, how your mind works, how your thoughts work to create your life. You know that there are here. Let me give you something I haven't said tonight. These people that we talk about, the powerful and the elite, guess what? They know this information. The only thing missing from what they know is the level of compassion and positive orientation. They know how it works, and what they use it for is to gain control and power and material wealth. They know how it works. Let me say that again. They know how it works. So when you ask me, I'm going to tell you, they know how it works. How does that make you feel if you don't know how it works and you have the opportunity to know how it works pretty much for free? And is there then, I mean, I know we've got to do a certain amount of time when we talk about things, but it's kind of like in school. We go from the first grade to the second or whatever. We go from this to that. We don't keep on repeating the first grade. We can't keep on as that old saying, doing the same thing and thinking we're going to get a different result. If we even keep on asking, how do we get out of this? And I keep on saying, to the best of my knowledge, this is how you do it. We're not used to real answers. That's why the people in the UFO community cannot accept the Meyer case. They are not really looking. They claim to be searching for something that when it's presented to them, they don't want it. They reject it. They attack it because it's the game. It's the let's go chasing lights in the sky, because a lot of their beliefs fundamentally really are that there isn't other intelligent life. Some of them are maybe afraid of it if it exists. So when they find that it's going on right here on Earth for 75 years, right in front of their noses with the best evidence that will ever be presented to us, they don't want it. They don't want it. Now, we've talked tonight about, yes, we know, we've covered for sure that in terms of the prophecies, they're upon us. In terms of what's coming, it looks pretty inescapable. So then the question is asked, how do we change and get out of this? That's now graduation. We've gone into the next grade. We don't go back to that conversation. We either take the advice and recommendations to explore what's been recommended, or we don't. But if we keep on going back and wringing our hands and saying then we're like the people in the UFO community. Oh, I want to find real evidence of UFO extraterrestrial life. No, you don't, because we just showed it to you. No, that can't be it. It's too good to be true. It can't be. He's a hoaxer. And then you get all the usual stuff from the ignoramuses. We must not be ignoramuses. You've asked the question, and now I said, okay, we've now graduated. We're now discussing the answer. That's where the conversation is. But in all fairness, because we can't yet really discuss a lot of the answer, because, again, in all fairness, that which I'm referring to, you haven't been cracking that open. You didn't know about that. You say, well, what does that mean? And what's the spiritual? Fair enough. So I lay out some basics that will be greatly expanded and expounded upon in the books and documents and all that from Meyer in the spiritual teaching, which he isn't the author of. Again, this is ancient stuff from the Juniverse here. So I say to you, first, we have to make an agreement with ourselves, not with me or you, with ourselves, that we are going to become 100% responsible for our own life, what we do with it. Now, that doesn't mean that we know right away. We don't have the biggest, clearest picture. You could use my future self for that if you want. But we've got to make that agreement with ourselves first. I'm taking charge of my life. I even wrote a song by that title in 1984. Now, the second step, we have to see things as they really are. This is called neutral positive thinking. This is very important, guys. It means we don't look at things to see what we like or don't like, what we prefer, what we don't prefer. We see a thing first as it is, whether it's outside of us or inside of us. That leads us to a third point, and that is that we learn to become conscious of and control our thoughts, because whether we know it or not, we are thinking 24/7. Thoughts are running through our minds. The problem, every one of those thoughts is giving us a feeling, whether it's an overt feeling, a subtle feeling or not, and those feelings lead to other little thoughts that make us act certain ways, very often, very habitually. We want to go back to discussing first grade again, for instance, Ufology 101. No, we're done with that. Now we're talking about life creation, our own life creation. So when we have these elements to deal with, it's challenging. It's like, well, what are you talking about? How do you do this? What does it mean? It means that for instance, let's say, as we're having a conversation, we're discussing something here, and let's say a thought comes up for me to say something or for you to ask something. Before we do that, we want to become, and it happens pretty quickly, we need to become aware of what that thought is. Where does that come from in us? These are things that actually can happen very quickly, so that we catch ourselves is in the sense of, is that really the answer I want to give? Is that the question I want to ask? What's behind that? What am I implying? All this stuff is, anyway, going on in our consciousness. We just, for the most part, don't notice it. We have to start to notice. This is where concentration, contemplation, meditation, and meditation can be done with your eyes open. It can be done while you're working. It's a focus. It's awareness. It's kind of like to bring these, we've talked about maybe 4 steps here. You start talking about this. This is new to most people. They're going to go, oh, well, yeah, no. We don't know yet, or we wouldn't be spending so much of our conscious and unconscious time with all the circus, these distractions.
You're right.
Think about it. If we could go, guys, right now outside and say, if I turn this crank over here, water will flow, and the crops will be watered, and I know they're going to grow, and there's no bad stuff. It's just that simple. But it's no longer that simple. Things have been taken out of the individual hands to a large degree. Can you still grow food? Yes, that's not what I meant. I mean that we now have a complex world that we need to be able to take and make sense of for ourselves when necessary, as necessary, to the best of our ability. But even more importantly, we've got to get the inside function we have in our heads. What do we think created computers? It came from the intelligence of the biggest, most amazing computer on earth, sitting inside of our heads. Right. Everybody's got one. So,
Michael, I just wanted to make this quick analogy. I was thinking about what you were saying, and the analogous to what you were saying is like me coming out of the house, and I know my car is in the driveway. I don't look at it and go, there's my car in the driveway. I just grab the keys, go jump in the car, start the car, pull out of the driveway, and drive to the location I'm going to, thinking about what I need to do. I know I'm in the vehicle. I know it's a technological thing that I'm driving in, but I'm not thinking about that. And that's the whole lights in the sky thing that we need to get over. It's the process of point A to point B of what you need to do. Be in the now and think of your present now and your future now from point A to point B. It's not the vehicle that gets you there. It's the process of your thought getting to where you need to be to achieve the next physical, emotional, and mental event that you need to progress forward into that next physical event. It's not all the material things that surround you.
You hit on an actually very interesting thing, which adds another dimension to it, and that is this. There's a part of us that operates that car without us having to put the same amount of conscious attention. Now, we've got to obviously be conscious about things, but just like we don't control our heartbeat and our blood flow and all that, there is a part of us that does that. There's a part of us in the subconscious that knows how it learns things and it can carry them out, while we can also engage the computer in our head in doing other functions. So you've hit on something that's actually interesting. It is a conscious mind now, more and more, where we want to bring certain things that are unconscious or subconscious into the conscious mind. So when we are intending that, when we're focusing, when we're contemplating, concentrating, meditating, slowing down and breathing in and breathing out and settling ourselves so we can start to touch what's the silence inside and that which comes up from inside, and then we're getting opening to a wealth of possibility that exceeds anything in what you were just talking about, the material world. So we are really unusually remarkable creatures, and we have parts of us that create dreams for us at night that we can't do when we're awake, that once we've learned a function like driving a car or operating a computer, using a phone, and even far more complex things in many cases, where we can perform these functions because a part of us takes over that, leaving us also free to be conscious and aware and thinking and creating and determining. We are the thing we're looking for. That's us.
Wow.
Well, when we're driving that car and we have been warned that there's going to be an accident, that it's up to us to know how we're going to deal with this upcoming accident.
Right.
We're going to go into it head first and, just say whatever, or are we going to try to plan to avoid it and go through it in the best way we can? So the bottom line is we got to just drop all the hate and greed and just address it all with love and care about humanity.
Well, that's certainly I would never argue with that. And I would say that while that is true, and we hold that intention and we hold that consciousness, we also go about the study of these mechanisms of how our thoughts work, how things are changed and affected in life, how we can take control of the destiny. And if we do it, as you're suggesting, with that consciousness of love and bringing goodness to the world, that's a responsibility then, because we want to do that properly. So we've got an opportunity here. Once we decide, when you decide, I'm going to do that, and you hang in there with that, then you'll do, the miracle of your life starts taking a whole other form, and it reveals itself to you in good time.
Oh, that's a great point. That's a great point.
That's where we want to go.
It's a pleasure having you on tonight, Michael. I mean, I'm just sitting here in awe listening to you.
Look, I can go on for another 2 hours with Michael because I just want to debate him and talk and just get on all sorts of things. Michael, you drive me nuts most of the time because you're just such an incredible you're an incredible walking library of knowledge through the Meyer case. It's incredible, man. You blow me away every time we talk, and I hope I didn't offend you in any way. I just ask questions, Michael. That's what I always do. This is me. This is what I do, my friend. And I hope you come down from Flag when you're in town, because I want to spend some time with you here in Phoenix.
Yeah,
have dinner,
sure.
Have dinner at the house, brother.
By the way, with what you've just said, I just have to tell you this about asking questions. asking questions is often far, far, far more valuable than telling people things, because you get to send the, what do you call it, the responsibility back to the person. You know, maybe I can say these things and do that. I have to take responsibility for myself, as you do for you and all that. When we try to help others, when we're really trying to help people, we must really take responsibility to ask the right questions. That's more helpful, I think, to people, generally speaking, than telling and giving advice. My daughter's pointed it out to me many, many times. Stop telling me what to do. You know, so.
Well, you make a great point. I mean, that's exactly right. Without asking questions, you learn nothing. Whether they're wrong or right questions, you will eventually get to the right questions with the right answer, because that road of knowledge opens up. You can't help but go there. It has to eventually lead there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, you're an incredible. Oh, by the way, I forgot to ask. When I sent that video back to you, it was quite interesting. I loved it, and it was just so organic and natural and beautiful with Michelle Delafave. That meeting you set up with Billy, that was just beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. I wish I could have been there for that. It was really wonderful.
It really was. It's just so for everybody who doesn't know what that is the young lady who used to sing on the Dean Martin show. She was I guess a backup singer in the Dean Martin show, and that had to do with the whole photographic evidence that was exposed at that time, and there was a miscommunication or a misrepresentation of what had happened, but Michael can explain it much better than I can. If you can, just really quick, Michael.
Well, basically, Billy Meyer was accused of hoaxing photographs by taking a picture of singers and dancers on the Dean Martin show. That turns out to have been physically impossible. That never happened. He took photographs of two women, Asket and Nira, who are extraterrestrial. When that happened, he was also told, and it happens to already be copyrighted in a text from 1975, he was told that there were two women in America who were entertainers and who were doubles for Asket and Nira. He asked about being able to go see them. The Play-Iron said to him, no, we're not going to do that. And he said, why? And he said, well, we can't go into it now. They knew that he was eventually going to get accused of this. But this woman, Michelle, was one of the Dean Martin people. She contacted me earlier in the year, and she said, look, I know that Billy didn't hoax anything, and I so admire him, and I know he's the real deal. I'd love to meet him. And I said, okay, let me tell you right off the bat, he's 80 years old. He's had a heart valve operation. He's not in the best of shape, but I will ask him. And then he wrote back, and he says, I will make an exception because I want to meet her. And when I was with him after that meeting in May, they were there in March, and he said, my gosh, she sure does look like Asket. It was very cute. He says, she really does, except Asket looks younger because, you know, Asket is hundreds of years old and doesn't age the same way we do. But he said, oh my gosh, I look at the photo and she sure does look like Asket. So anyway,
Michael, will we ever get to, as a human species, will we get back to, because they talked about again, I don't want to bring this up, but they talked about us living hundreds or thousands of years back
that'll happen,
in the long past. Are we going to go back there?
We will eventually attain or regain those very, very lengthy lifespans. After a while, our lifespans will jump up to 145, then to 250, up to 300 and beyond. That'll take time. The scientists do already know somewhat about the aging genes and are working on them. It won't happen probably that most people won't have access to it for a while, but then eventually, probably in a couple hundred years, people will then again have those lifespans. So we'll have something to look forward to, even though we won't remember who we were this time around.
Michael, I want to thank you so much. Badbaby, you can take it from here. Michael, thank you so much, and I hope we can do this again, my friend.
We will,
I love you. I love you, man. I love you, brother.
Wonderful, and I thank Badbaby, too, for all of this, and I really appreciate this opportunity, and I'll put a link up. You'll send me the link for the archive, and I will put it up on my site.
Make sure you get it, Michael.
I will send this recording out to you ASAP. And again, thank you so much for spending time with us. A very interesting show, and we would love to have you come back.
We'll do it again. That's what we'll do. We'll do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Lots of love to you.